So many of us may have heard stories or read stories in textbooks or heard stories from our parents or grandparents about having to do nuclear war drills or be in a state of fear during the Cold War because of the threat of a war with nuclear weapons. Now our generation and current generations are lucky enough not to have to experience these things because of relieved tensions and the falling, obviously, of the Soviet Union. However, a deal was recently passed that compromises these safeties that we so take for granted today. Now this deal is more commonly known as the Iranian nuclear deal, which is basically an agreement that lifts sanctions on Iran and changes the way they're allowed to work and use nuclear arms and resources. So my claim for you tonight is that the Iranian nuclear deal fails to prohibit Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons that could be used to support terror organizations. The first reason being that the agreement fails to provide adequate oversight on Iran. Secondly, support of terror organizations demonstrates a danger to global and United States interests. And despite sanctions not expiring for over a decade, resources are made available to them immediately that raise concern. So the first point being that the agreement fails to provide adequate oversight on Iran. So according to an article in the National Review, the deal doesn't guarantee access to the military sites or allow the United States to send any of our own inspectors to go visit these sites. Additionally, because of this allows Iran to move any of their nuclear sites anywhere in their country for strategic purposes. So Dennis Prager of Prager University claims that the deal is ineffective because Iran is required to be notified 24 days prior to an inspection. Additionally, if Iran objects to this inspection, 4 of the major powers that approved the deal in the first place have to approve the inspection before anybody could go and check out any of Iran's facilities, which could possibly allow Iran more time to change anything and come in compliance for their inspection. Now my second point for you is that Iranian support of terror organizations demonstrates a danger to United States and other global interests. So according to a report on terror by the United States Department of State, Iran has been a state sponsor of terrorism since 1984. Currently there's only 3 countries on this list, the first and greatest sponsor being Iran, and the other 2 being Sudan and Syria. Now this same report also continues to claim that they have in the past and continually support terrorist groups in the region. So the same country that was one of the biggest proponents, the United States, of the Iranian deal, also has documentation all over the state website declaring that Iran supports terrorist groups all over and has in the past. Additionally, Iran has also called for the extermination of Israel. So in September 2015, CNN reported that the leader of Iran said that Israel will not continue to exist in the next 25 years. So at some point they will cease to exist on the face of this earth. Now while Israel is a highly contested subject in today's world and what they're doing and whatever is going on with them, the fact that Iran is so blatant and so willing to admit that they're willing to destroy Israel should be an object of concern for everybody. So if Iran objects with what Israel is doing and they want to eliminate Israel from existing, what if they object with anything of us and the Western civilization is doing, and what if they want to take us out as well? And my third and final point for you is that despite sanctions that last over a decade, other resources have been made available to Iran that they can support terror organizations immediately. So according to Prager University, these sanctions continue to be in effect for the next 10 to 15 years. Now these sanctions vary. Some vary about how they can trade, manufacture, and build arms, and other restrict the amount of material that can be produced. For example, how much uranium can be enriched or how many reactors they're allowed to have. Now also, while Iran has to wait for these sanctions to expire before building any type of arm, other resources have been made available to them immediately that can also cause some issues. So according to an article in the Jewish Journal, $100 to $150 billion in frozen oil revenues that this country gains from this deal, they could simply transfer to their regional terror allies. Now, if the irony isn't already thick enough, and I've seen an article in John Kerry admitted to the CNBC that some of these resources that Iran is going to be getting will be used to support groups considered terrorists. So, John Kerry, also being a very strong supporter of the deal and also helped in the creation of it, admits without hiding, without trying to hide it or cover it up at all, that some of these resources that are going to be made available to them will be going to terror purposes. So, in conclusion, this Iranian nuclear deal fails to prohibit Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons that could be used to support terror organizations. Now, this deal sounds good for the short term. While these sanctions do limit the ability of Iran to produce any type of weapon or harm any people, the long term is not so certain. So it is our obligation and our responsibility to ensure a safe and secure future, as we have experienced, for following generations. And so thank you for your time.
All right, I thought you did a nice job at the beginning trying to explain why this matters, and your point of view, your propositional statement's very clear. There's an excellent preview of what the supporting structure is, so it's going to be easy for us to follow. On the individual points, you usually give us some explanation of the context that you're talking about and what the issues are. You were citing sources pretty consistently. I thought on that third point that it was interesting that you have a piece of reluctant testimony from the Secretary of State that acknowledges that some of these funds are likely to be transferred to supporting groups that are identified as terrorist-based. So that seems to be pretty dramatic. One of the things that I think is also maybe potentially left out here is the notion that when the Iranians are technically able to create this kind of weapon, that there is some concern about whether or not they would transfer that technology to their proxy terror groups as well. And I think that's one of the things that might also make your argument a little bit stronger had you spent some time on that. That might also answer that earlier argument that we had as well. Like I said, the structure is easy to follow. I think you could probably find a little bit more information on a couple of points, but it's generally solid information that you've got. And I do think that you had some factual data about the state sponsors of terror. You identified the ones that are on that list. You had some factual data about the amount of money that was released. A little bit of testimony about what the risks are, what the attitude is of Iran toward Israel. I think that you might be able to demonstrate a greater degree of hostility and danger there with some additional information. That's part of the argument that I didn't think was as clearly developed as is probably capable of being done. So maybe that would be a place where you could slice in some additional information and fatten up the argument a bit. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.